We have a guest, by the way, and he's just arrived. Simon Evans is the co-founder of The Soccer Business, which has evolved from a newsletter, is a podcast, is a website now. It is the resource for all things soccer business in North America and beyond. Simon, thanks for joining us, mate. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on. Borussia Mönchengladbach he's gone to.
There
you go.
Colorado, Mönchengladbach Dubs. Easy mistake to make.
I know. Often confused.
Yeah. Great name, Mönchengladbach.
Oh, it's one of my favorites. Yeah, when I first started covering the Bundesliga years and years and years ago, that's my favorite. Borussia Mönchengladbach. It took me about half a season to figure it out, but I've got it back now. Simon, so you've been in the States for several years now. Was there ever a time that you envisaged the day where you'd see Donald Trump at the White House as president with the World Cup trophy and the FIFA president in his back pocket? Strange times in North America.
Yeah, it is odd to see that. Yeah, I mean, he seems to have really decided that the World Cup is going to be something that he wants to take credit for it being a great success. I think he sees some political advantage in it. Clearly, I mean, kind of understand why FIFA wants to have a good relationship with him, because I mean, the alternative is potentially very, very risky for FIFA not to have a good relationship with him, obviously, but it is weird to see like the trophy there, discussions going on about the war in Russia and Ukraine, and there's the Club World Cup trophy behind the president as he's talking. That is a little bit weird to see.
Yeah, there's Infantino just nodding and looking at his shoes as Donald Trump's addressing these global crises. It's really something. So okay, here we are then. World Cup year. It's all getting real now, isn't it? If 94 was a tipping point in many regards for the game over here with the start of MLS, for example, what can 2026, do you think, do for this land of ours in North America and football?
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because, you're right, 94 led to the creation of MLS, which has gradually over the last 30 years led to most of the major markets in North America having a top flight professional team. So that's kind of already happened. That was the thing that people have been waiting for 70 years, best part of a century, to actually happen, and it's happened. Obviously, there's not going to be a great, massive change in Mexico, which is an established football market. So where is the change and the impact going to be? And I think we're starting to see the indications in the lower divisions and in those markets that haven't got big MLS clubs yet. All the stuff we're reporting on in the newsletter about developments where we get information about new stadiums, new clubs, expansion plans, it's all USL. It's all going on. And sometimes at a really low level in the USL as well. The USL 2, where, they're basically playing for 3 months in the summer with college players. But you start to see these clubs and some of the crowds, we saw it in Vermont. We've seen it in, Portland, Maine. Even here in my state, Florida, on the Gulf Coast, Naples and Sarasota, places like that, where they are filling these little stadiums. And I did an interview last week with Justin Papadakis, who's the deputy CEO of USL and in charge of their real estate projects. And I said, how many cities are you talking to about new stadiums and clubs and new clubs as well, expansion clubs? Because they do it an interesting way. They're going in and starting with the stadium first and then trying to find an ownership group to come in. And he said over 70 different towns and cities that they're talking to. And a lot of those will be USL 2, USL 1, that lower thing. And for Canada, what does it mean? I mean, surely, if we're talking about USL in the States, then we're probably talking about CPL in Canada, aren't we? And those communities that don't have MLS teams. And I think we've seen indications with the women's game as well that they can respond to teams going in there. So if there's going to be a boom and a big growth, I think that's where it's going to be.
Do you think that it's because they see value, Simon, in the project? Would you see where MLS is now to get in $500 million, ish? Incredible amount of money when you look at, I think Toronto FC got in for 20 million, Jimmy, if I'm correct. Like, it's incredible value. So are they seeing that in the lower divisions and the potential for that?
Yeah, I mean, you've got to be like, mega billionaire to even think about going into MLS now, haven't you? Which wasn't the case 20 years ago, as you say, and I think $500 million was the expansion fee they paid for San Diego. That's more than the Saudis paid for Newcastle United. I mean, that's it's an incredible amount of money. You can go into USL for 10% or less than 10% of that. And they're talking about creating a new Division 1 league and so on. I think there is, so it's an easier access, but also, it works. It's worked everywhere, hasn't it? I mean, MLS has managed to go into these markets. No one would have said, if we'd have been talking 10, 15 years ago, and you said, I think Nashville will be a great market for Major League Soccer, people would have sniggered about it, and it has been a great market. And you start to see all these places that people didn't expect soccer to take root. And it sort of indicates that if you do it right and you do the community, and MLS is very good at that part of it. They're very good, I think, at going into those places and doing the outreach and the community work and the marketing and putting that whole package together and working with the city and the political people. And if you can do that, and it seems to me that USL is getting a little bit better at that, they're developing these relationships with the municipalities and being able to put together packages with they're putting these stadiums in sort of multi-use, retail projects or regeneration entertainment areas and all these kind of places. There's benefits there for everybody. And it seems to me that there's loads and loads of upside to starting a team in these communities. And what Justin Papadakis was saying last week was they're never going to get an NFL or an NBA team, these smaller markets. Greenville, South Carolina forget it. They're not having a top level pro sport. But you can in soccer, you can have a pro team. And once you have a pro team, mayors like the idea of being mayor of a city that has a professional sports team.
Simon, do you think that MLS, especially with the USSF sanctioning of USL on the men's side and the women's side, and you can make the same argument for NWSL being the top of that pyramid, do they see USL and its structure with promotion and relegation as a veritable threat, or do they just see it as growing the game in concert?
I think something's changed at that level. It's a really good question, because if you go back to the days when the NASL tried, and I think the NSL was in Canada as well, wasn't it? Was Ottawa in that league? I think what?
Yeah.
Yeah, for that brief period. It did feel at that time like the US Soccer Federation was like not keen on this at all for whatever reasons. They might have had some good reasons in that case. But it did feel like that there was such a tight relationship between US soccer and MLS that any alternative structure that was created would be seen by people as a threat. I think that's changed under the current leadership. I think they're much more open to things that are growing the game. All the indications are that they're trying to help this Division 1 league that USL wants to set up, where they have to get to 15,000. But it seems like they're not going to start rejecting clubs if it's a 12,000 stadium that's really nicely done and they've done a good job and they've put in money and they've got a good ownership group. I don't think they're looking for reasons to make it fail, to put it that way. I think there's a lot more support for it. And also, MLS has got to 30 teams already. So, how many more can it add before it starts to become like massively oversized? Yeah. 32 seems like the magic number. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, if Phoenix isn't part of that 32, something's got to exist for communities like that. So I think it's changed.
Do you think if let's talk about MLS switching to the more traditional football calendar, which seems, and what Don Garber says, it's going to happen at some point. Would USL be smart to follow suit, or would they benefit by having their own season away from MLS more so?
It's an interesting one, that, isn't it? They might see it as an opportunity, as you suggest, to that they can be the summertime soccer league.
Yeah.
But then USL would have the same problems that MLS now has about constantly coming up against CONCACAF tournaments, Women's World Cup, World Cups, all those other things. And then we're starting to see USL sides, and this is why I think it has changed over the last few years. We're starting to see USL sides selling players to Europe. And some clubs, I think Orange County in California has sold 5 or 6 players to like Holland and Belgium. And the revenue from that is basically, it's now starting to work. You know, they're getting the revenue from that so they can invest in their own youth academy and develop more players. And that's how it's supposed to work, of course. And not being part of that, the same transfer window that the rest of the world had, makes that much harder. So it's a balancing thing. I can see why, you know, some people would want to go that route. I mean, it's a tricky one. You know, for the northern markets and the Canadian markets, obviously the switch, but it'll be interesting to see what MLS actually come up with at the end of it as well, because from what I heard at the meetings in Austin that I went down to, people were talking about having a winter break so that the season would have a winter break, but it wouldn't be the end of one season and the start of the next, but it actually would in reality would mean there wouldn't be that many more games taking place in December and February than there is now.
Yeah, there's a way around it, isn't there?
Yeah.
You know, people at first are, you know, it's so commonplace in many leagues to have that break in the winter. You see it in Europe in the winter.
Germany's done it
for them. Yeah. So obviously North America is still the big 4 leagues, but football, soccer's getting closer and closer. I mean, are you confident that soccer will break into that big 4 in the next few years, or are we a little bit? Does it need to?
I don't know if it needs to. I don't know. I mean, it's fun to look at some of the, you know, to look at baseball and compare. You know, when you look at all the demographic trends and everything else, then you could probably make a case that, you know, maybe soccer could be up there with baseball and the NHL. But this is, you know, these are massive land masses we talk about, aren't we? And huge populations. I mean, if soccer remains a niche sport, it's a pretty big niche. Yeah. I mean, you know, we had I know that there's always these one-off events and stuff, but they keep happening. You know, there's 40,000 people in San Francisco for an NWSL game last week. You know, MLS teams are now regularly drawing 30,000, some of them, to games. You know, so does it matter? You know, whether other sports get more? You know, I don't think it's one takes away from the other. I mean, there's also, I think, a really interesting changes going on in the kind of sports fan, the mainstream sports fan, where I think when I moved to the States in 2007, and there were still people, it was still kind of okay if you were an NFL fan to like mock soccer, you know, especially, you know, that kind of silly sort of stuff. And it's not like that now. It's not cool to be anti-soccer, I don't think. You know, and you're more likely to, if you meet a Pittsburgh Steelers fan and you've got an accent like I've got, they'll probably strike up an argument, a discussion with you about Manchester United and what's going on. I mean, that's just the way things have changed. And
we don't talk about Burnley.
You got that accent spot on there, Craig. Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. No, they do talk about Burnley, funnily enough. People know where it is now anyway, yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Hey, you've got Luca Cogliaccio, right? He's still there, isn't he? Canadian boy. So
he just loaned him out to Espanyol. He's gone back to Espanyol.
That's right.
For a year.
That's right. Yeah.
Burnley's American owners have now bought Espanyol as well. We're becoming part of one of these multi-club ownership things, which
was that a bit of an eye roll, Simon? That's a bit of an eye roll, wasn't it?
I don't like them, to be honest. I mean, I've spent a lot of time looking at the business and the trends, and you get into that side of it as well. But the multi-club ownership thing, it just feels wrong to me. I mean, we've all got second and third teams in some ways in different countries, don't we? You know, I mean, I've lived in Italy and I lived in Hungary, so I've got teams from those countries that I like to support. But Burnley's my team. I would never want to be in a position where, you know, I had divided loyalties. Like, you know, I mean, Espanyol could easily get into the Europa League. They're not out of that tier of Spanish football at all, or even the Champions League. You know, I'd dread to think if Burnley had another fantastic season and managed to get in the Europa League like they did under Sean Dyche, and we couldn't compete in it because our owners, you know, that would be terrible. And this is what's going on with Crystal Palace this year, isn't it? So
they've been screwed over, haven't they? Really have, yeah. It's just brutal. Forrester, they managed to stay in there, but it's a complicated and it's a weird world. It's the football world these days. But over here, listen, the games look great, stadiums are great, TV broadcasts look great. The Apple deal, I mean, do we know if it's been successful or not? That they seem to be keeping the numbers pretty tight and not
Yeah.
diluting too much.
They came out with some numbers during the MLS All-Star game in Austin, 120,000 average per MLS games on Apple. And that's a global number, so that's not just a US number. And the way they count it is different from the way that they normally count TV ratings, so we don't know if we're comparing apples to apples. No pun intended. But it's like that doesn't sound great, but then you count out that there's 15 games over a weekend. That's 1.8 million people watching MLS every weekend on Apples, which sounds pretty good to me, and comparable to the sort of numbers that watch the Premier League. But it doesn't feel like a success, does it? I mean, I think the product is. I think the guys who work on it do a great job. I think it looks great. The picture quality is like the best soccer you could probably see in this market, and it's easy. You know, you go on the system and it's really easy. But I don't think they've done the work around it with like the highlights and the clips and you know, putting all that free stuff out there that everybody else is doing. You know, Sky do it in the UK and ESPN do it with other sports, and everybody else is just putting out loads of free stuff on social so that they create this buzz around it. And MLS does it on its own official channel, but I think they've tried hard with the distribution to get back onto cable with like Comcast and DirecTV now having MLS Season Pass on it. But I don't know. I did a podcast episode with a guy who's a streaming expert, not into soccer at all, but just really into like the streaming industry. And he thinks there's a break clause at the halfway point after 5 years. So we're coming up to the end of the third year now. He didn't get that 100% confirmed, but there are quite a lot of people, and it would make sense with a 10-year deal that it's not like guaranteed for 10 years. That's a long, long time, isn't it? So it'd be interesting to see whether they renegotiate in some way and start to put more games back on linear television. I think they do miss out in the playoffs when there's sometimes you picked up more casual sports fans who were like, okay, I'm not watching MLS every Saturday, but I'll watch the playoffs. I mean, I do that with basketball. I don't watch all the NBA regular season, but I'll watch the conference finals or whatever. So I think there might be some changes in it, but it's a mixed bag, I think.
Do you think it might coincide with Messi leaving MLS and the impact that might have?
That's a good point. I mean, the timing is probably about the same time, isn't it? You know, next year you're going to have, I mean, it looks like Messi's going to be here next season and opening the new Miami Stadium and do all that. And then, yeah, that would be around the time that they could have a break clause if Dan Rayburn, who's the expert who I quoted, is right about that. What are they going to do? I mean, you know, and how are they going to replace Messi?
Yeah, you signed Ronaldo at 52.
Still be in great shape.
He'd play in the All-Star game, definitely. He'd score a hat-trick in the All-Star game and celebrate every goal, wouldn't he?
Oh, yeah.
He would.
Absolutely. Proving that
How big, Simon, is it that the Americans need a superstar? We've talked about how look at Freddie Adu. They pushed that young lad and they tried to, make him out like he was Pele, trying their hardest with them. Pulisic is the guy at the moment. But to get somebody, like a bona fide superstar, would that move the needle a little bit?
I think it would be, yeah. I mean, an American superstar, which they hoped Pulisic would be. He hasn't really become that, But somebody who was, playing in the Premier League for one of the top teams and being a star performer would totally change things, I think. I mean, there's not much sign of it happening immediately, but I don't know. I mean, you in Canada, you're closer to that than the US is in a sense with Davies. No, I mean, has he made that kind of impact?
That's a good question. I think he has made an impact for sure, but the steps up here are certainly baby steps, like in everything, and that goes way back to the 80s and the North American Soccer League and all these different things that have happened along the way. Hopefully in 2026, and Canada has a good showing, and Jonathan Davis is the guy. He'll be a household name, but I don't think we have him in that realm yet. As big as big as he is, but I think we're getting there.
I think Canada Soccer's over the years have done a piss poor job promoting their athletes. And the current leadership are aware of that, and they say they're going to address it. We'll see what happens in the build up to the World Cup. But still, most people here don't even know who Alphonso Davies is. We live in this little football echo chamber of ours, and we think that the game's bigger than it is, I think, in many regards. But I know friends of mine who are just sports fans, not soccer fans. They couldn't tell you who he plays for.
Right.
You know, the brand isn't out there just yet. But listen, we've got a big year ahead of us, right? So this is the time for it to change.
I mean, me saying all that about the lower divisions being the ones that get the impact. I mean, Canada didn't have that 1994 experience. So, I mean, maybe the impact as well could be bigger in Canada than it is in the States. I mean, do you feel that that's realistic?
I don't know if that's realistic. I think that's what we hope for.
Right.
But I think we're going to be disappointed, unfortunately, because I don't know if enough is being done around it to prepare for it, from CPL to NSL or New Women's Professional League or MLS franchises. I hope for it to be that.
To build that connection between the World Cup and here's your club in your community. Yeah.
Exactly. But with the grassroots and the top of the pyramid, like we've talked about with the pro leagues in this country, and then the impact of bringing, you know, the biggest event in the world to our country. And I just have a feeling that everyone's going to be let down at the end of it because we're not well prepared enough.
Also, the worry that there's potential that Vancouver Whitecaps could move.
Yeah.
And does Montreal fall into that space, you know, in the near future?
Every time I read anything that Joey Saputo says, it doesn't sound like a man who's like ready for the next 10 years of building the Montreal franchise. Like,
I agree.
Yeah.
It's a problem for sure. And Vancouver's sounding better now than what Mallet was talking just a couple of weeks ago when they signed Muller, what that meant for potential stadium plans. So I think you ask a Vancouver Whitecaps fan now, they're a lot happier and more optimistic than they were 3-4 months ago.
Yeah. No, they're funny signals to send if you're determined to move the team to Indianapolis or wherever, to sign Thomas Muller and start looking for a stadium is a strange thing to do if you absolutely determined. I wonder if that was an attempt to maybe raise some capital interest around the stadium to get investors to come in as minority partners, and, you know, or maybe 50-50 type partners who would come in, or maybe something like what Manchester United have done. You know, you bring somebody in who's maybe not got the resources to buy the whole thing, but could buy half of it, you know.
And they strip it down and rebuild it, right? Kind of what they're doing. I mean, Canadian soccer, man, we could go on for hours about the state of the game over here. And, you know, just when we think we're getting ahead, we take a couple of steps back. And it's, you know, more recently with the media, One Soccer, who is the platform for the Canadian Premier League, they haven't been able to get linear carriage because of one of the big major cable networks and Rogers blocking it. So that's now gone to the CRTC. They've ruled in One Soccer's favor, which should result in linear carriage. But right now, you know, we're still waiting to find out what that means. But there's always a challenge and a roadblock. It's extremely frustrating to cover the game in this country. But I mean, as a whole, I mean, broadcast media, it is evolving every year. It looks different. Do you think most leagues are looking at the Apple deal over here and thinking, man, let's see how this works? Because surely the big play for a Premier League is to one day have their own streaming service for their games, isn't it?
I don't know about that. I mean, the French league's gone down that route because their broadcast deals collapsed in France, and they found themselves with almost no alternative to doing it themselves. And that sounds to have got off to a decent start from the numbers that I saw. But I don't know. I mean, the Premier League makes so much money out of these broadcast deals internationally that it's something that might work. If they decided, right, we don't want to work with Sky Sports in the UK anymore for some reason, who've been a great partner for them. But if they decided to go down that route, they'd be turning their back on a lot of money internationally. And it's very complicated to run these things as well. So I don't know. I think there's a lot of people in that space talk about, you know, streaming is taking over everything. And it may be that the mechanism we watch things is often streaming, but it's probably still going to be these big media companies who are doing it. You know, it's, you know, if ESPN were to get the rights for MLS, for example, hypothetically, streaming would be a massive part of the package, wouldn't it? There'd be like 1 or 2 games going on ESPN2 or whatever, but there'd be a streaming package, and it's the same pretty much everywhere. I think it's going to be a combination of the two.
Yeah, I mean, it's the audience habits are changing as well, though. I mean, obviously the money is still with live games. We understand that, but I look at, like, I've got a 14-year-old kid, and she and her friends, they don't watch sports. They watch highlights, maybe watch TikTok, some shoulder programming, who's doing what. But when I was her age, I was just obsessed with football and rugby and cricket. I watched hours upon hours of live games. I don't know if that's the case anymore with the kids nowadays, as I sound really old. And over the
But you can't now, can you? I mean, when I was growing up with football, we had 1 live game a week on English television, you know, and that's how we all ended up getting into Serie A, because Channel 4 started showing a Sunday game, and we're like, oh,
That's right.
you know,
That's right. Yeah.
James Richardson, right?
and
ITV.
yeah, absolutely, yeah, and you know, there was so little sport on television, really, comparatively, in those days. Now, I mean, it's just insane the amount of soccer you can watch. I mean, you can't possibly watch, you know. So even people who work in covering the sport and stuff, I'm watching highlights, not full games. I mean, if I'm watching MLS on a Saturday night for work, and I'm watching Burnley on Saturday morning for love and passion and all the rest of it, am I going to watch Newcastle versus Bournemouth at 2:00 in the afternoon? You know, I mean, if I want to head to a divorce call, I probably would. But, you know, it's like, so you watch highlights, don't you? You know, you go on YouTube and do it, and everyone's doing that. So yeah, I mean, whether we've reached saturation point with it all, I think it just depends how. All the fans are different, aren't they? There's fans who are really, really into the European game, and who will watch a Serie A game and watch a La Liga game and will watch Champions League. There's other people who focus on their local scene in North America. Some people who just watch Premier League, you know, and don't watch anything else at all. So I think you know, it's become a quite sophisticated market, really, where people are picking and choosing from this vast sort of, you know, pick and mix stand, really.
Do you think people follow players more than they ever did because of the social media side of things and that connection to them? So if they move from Barcelona to Man United to Juventus, do you think they're following and cheering for individuals as opposed to teams more so?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of evidence that the Ronaldo Messi era created that in a lot of ways. And I had Rio Ferdinand on our podcast recently, and he gave the example of Lamine Yamal and said, just watch as his career develops. You know, if he leaves Barcelona and goes to PSG, millions of people around the world will switch their loyalties to PSG, their Instagram follows and their shirt buying and everything else. And then if he goes to Manchester United, the same will happen. And then he goes to Flamengo at the end of his career in Brazil, and people will be watching that. And I think it's right. I mean, when Andrea Agnelli at Juventus, who ended up being one of the villains of the Super League sort of thing, he for years was going on about this, and no one was taking him seriously. And he was saying, look, there's these people growing up, and it's happening in Asia first, where they follow players rather than teams, and we don't realize this. And he was absolutely ahead of his time and right with that. And you see it with Son immediately, like the impact on LAFC. And, you know, you could start to see it with, I mean, Inter Miami, the whole Inter Miami phenomena is obviously a case of that. So I think we're going to see more and more of that. The younger generation have got, you know, you see kids walking around in all sorts of shirts in Miami that have nothing to do with where their parents are from or what their traditional loyalties might be.
Simon, we were talking at the beginning about, or one of Sharm's questions to you was about soccer remaining a niche sport, and then combining it with Craig's question about the following that these stars and like the star power, the impact it has on their current club or their future club. What about the Club World Cup and kind of the approach that they took? Was that, do you think, them trying to North Americanize the Club World Cup, or was that just moving the needle on the trend, which is more towards capturing these viral moments?
Yeah, it's a good one. I mean, it did feel a little bit, I think, to people outside of North America, it felt quite Americanized, you know.
Yeah.
I think the reaction from, I mean, there was a ridiculous hostility to the whole thing in England, which was, I found quite bizarre. But even the people who watched it were like, what are the players being called out individually when they run out on the field?
It was very wrestling, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, they even had, what's his name, the Let's Get Ready to Rumble guy doing the final, didn't they?
Michael Buffer.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And the halftime shows and all this kind of stuff, and then lots of lights and razzmatazz and stuff. And it does feel like that was FIFA sort of adopting what they think is like best practice in the North American market, even though, as we know, that doesn't really happen in soccer. And I'm not sure the rest of the world necessarily wanted that, but the tournament as a whole, I think, does touch into a little bit of that, what we're talking about, the sort of new fan, because it was just amazing to me to be in a stadium in Miami with 20,000 Egyptians, most of whom live in the US, supporting Al Ahly and going completely crazy for 90 minutes. And everyone was like, where have these people come from? Like, I mean, we hear, and this constantly happens. And it is one of the most, I think it's one of the best things about being around soccer in this part of the world is, you'll turn up at a game in Red Bull Arena and it's all Guatemalans, and like, whoever thinks really that much about Guatemalan soccer, and yet there's 18,000 people going absolutely crazy. And I think the Club World Cup tapped into that, didn't it? Tunisian fans packing out Times Square. I thought it was great like that. And when I first came out here, that's why I like the Gold Cup, even though it's, it's a bit of a weak tournament in a lot of ways.
Come on.
Yeah.
Two winners here. Yeah. I can't find where they are. These guys.
No, but in the sense that it's always held in the host, the host country is always the same. You know what I mean? Come on.
I know.
Yeah. Broken the heart now. Broken the hearts.
But one of the things that is cool about it is turning up, and there's these huge parties going on. Of Hondurans have turned up, and the Cubans is a different story. But you get these whole festivals of these communities around the US, which is great. And the Club World Cup tapped into that. It makes me wonder whether it would work if they took it to Europe, for example. I mean, would a summer tournament, those crowds, people were mocking in England, were mocking empty seats and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, would you get 30,000 people in Middlesbrough for a game between a Tunisian side and a Brazilian side? I don't think you would.
Yeah, exactly.
But it was happening. And maybe there's only the US or North America that could really do that. I mean, if they go to Saudi or somewhere, there's not going to be all those Brazilians there and 50,000 Boca Juniors fans turning up. Well, they might.
I thought in that regard, it was a success, though, wasn't it? Let's be honest. And I think Gianni was quite happy with it. And the football was fantastic. And if you can remove all the bullshit and, all the cynicism away from it, the actual football and the concept is a great idea. We just need more.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. I was skeptical until that playoff game between LAFC and Club America, which was one of the most intense physical games of soccer I've seen in this region, because they were like, we're getting in this tournament, and they were going hell for leather. The crowd was packed. It was a 50-50 crowd, brilliant atmosphere. And I thought, okay, yeah, this is real. Like, because there was always that thing, is it just going to be like one of these International Champions Cup things? Is it going to be like a glorified exhibition tournament? But no, it was real. It was the real deal, almost as real as the Gold Cup. Yeah.
There you go.
Certainly the amount of money available to these clubs and potentially the players via bonuses helped to motivate them. Do you think?
Yeah. So, yeah. Yeah.
It's $500,000.
And the clubs.
Of course.
Yeah. And they had to do, I mean, this is the irony of a lot of the sort of skepticism from Europe about it and saying, oh, it's a meaningless tournament. Why? The reason why there was all that money needed to be raised from the broadcasters, stroke the Saudi investors in the zone and all the rest of it, is because the European clubs were like, you've got to pay us to turn up at this. Otherwise, they weren't going to come. They weren't going to come. Or they would send their youth team over or something,
Yeah, it's amazing the motivation of money. And I mean, it's one of those tournaments where, if you, as a fan of these teams, it's really important if you win it. If you don't win it, it's like, oh well, nice little vacation for the summer, get out, watch a few games. But overall, Chelsea fans are big fans of it now, right? And it's going to help their PSR, I'm sure, as well, getting 110 million or whatever it is in the conference.
Yeah, Although they were quite discreet with their sort of world champions banner that they put up there. I think they were still a little bit wary of like some English fans would sort of mock that. And it does feel weird to say Chelsea are world champions. You know, it's not quite there yet, is it? That.
Yeah, well, listen, Trump stole the show anyway, didn't he? And the medal ceremony and the trophy.
Stole the medal.
Oh, wait till he sees that World Cup trophy.
Yeah, Christ.
He'll be all over that.
Oh,
Hey, Simon, listen, we could talk for a long time. We'll get you back on the show at some point. This is really great. Really enjoyed this. Where can people find the Soccer Business and from the podcast, the website, the newsletter?
thesoccerbusiness.com. It's all there. It's all there. The podcast is there and the newsletter sign-up page is there. So, yeah, anyone who's interested in what's going on in terms of the off-the-field stuff, there's quite a lot there.
Love your show, Simon. Really do. It's excellent.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I watched that Rio Ferdinand one as well. He was my old teammate at West Ham. Boy, oh boy, he's I wouldn't say changed, but certainly matured because he was a young lad at West Ham and chasing balls and chasing girls.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing though because we did the second one we did Lalas. We had Alexi Lalas on, and a lot of people said to me, "Why have you got Lalas on? We see him all the time. We know his shtick and everything, and you know we hear enough of him." But for half an hour, he was talking very calmly, very analytically about most of the things we've been talking about on this show, and he was great. He was fantastic because anyone who's met him and knows him knows he's not like he is on TV all the time, yeah. And it was the same with Rio. Like, I mean, you see him as a pundit as well, and he was a lot more thoughtful, and he takes his business stuff very seriously. Clearly, yeah, yeah. So
I love that he's walked away from mainstream media and is kind of focusing on his own stuff. That's brilliant, refreshing.
Yeah, yeah. And part of the reason is, I think as he was saying in the pod was, you've got that 40 seconds, 1 minute take you've got to make after the game where you've got to sum it all up, and as an ex-player you can't really give a fair and serious analysis of a game in a minute, and now he can take as long as he wants to do it. So
podcast, it's the beauty of podcasts.
We better hope so anyway. Jesus, I hope it's a bloody future anyway. Spending a lot of time and no money right now. So
it's not. There's always pies, mate. There's always pies.
There's always pies. Yeah, exactly. Try and combine a pie cast. There you go. We'll figure it out. Thanks a lot, Simon. This is great.
Cheers. Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me. Cheers.
Thanks, Simon.
Thanks, Simon.
Cheers.
That is Simon Evans of The Soccer Business. Fascinating chat. And I really do recommend you guys check out his website, sign up to his newsletter, because the game's we started the show how the game's in pretty good shape. And even here in North America, there's so many good things happening. There's so much money in it at various levels that, we can focus on the negative. It's easy to talk about, quite honestly. But I think overall, we're in this growth phase in North America, and it's not going to stop anytime soon.
No, I think the biggest problem with our game is that it's so fragmented. You have Serie A fans and MLS fans might not be, they might be Austin fans, but they might not be LA fans or watch other games. Or you got the Premier League and then the World Club Cup, and then you got the women's football, and like it just forever, right? International versus club. So the Mexican League, Liga MX, is the most watched league in the United States, followed by the EPL and then MLS. Like, it's crazy.